Good morning.
Okay, good morning. I want to invite all of you to welcome our first special speaker. He is the Executive Director of Bay Area Council Economic Institute. He's also a F50 Global Committee member, a featured speaker in our previous events. His firm, his Economic Institute, did lots of research regarding the impact of pandemic to the Bay Area companies. And let's give a big welcome to Sean.
Good morning, David. Nice to be with you.
Okay, so you are a very famous person, doesn't need an introduction. Let's go to the first question right away. And my very first question, of course, is the pandemic impact. During the June, I believe the last time we spoke, many of us, including myself, are hoping the pandemic will be gone in the summer or end of this year and the vaccine will come back. And now it looks like it will not be gone at least for another year, maybe even 2 years. Or maybe somebody says it's forever. So I want to ask you that if the pandemic lasts for in the near future, next 1 year, 2 years, what is the potential impact to the economics, particularly to our Bay Area companies?
Well, one thing we've come to understand is how much we don't really know about this. As you were suggesting, David, when this all kicked off last March, many people thought that we would shut down for maybe 3 weeks and people would go on furlough and they would be hired back by June or July and we'd be off in a V-shaped curve. I didn't think that was going to be the case, but there was a lot of thinking that we would be through this by the summer. And then the date keeps pushing back and back and back. So right now, as I talk to medical experts, I don't think anybody really knows how long it's going to go on, except that nobody that I've spoken to expects any return to normal before next summer. And then the question is, as you said, do we go to 2022? But it appears that we'll be dealing with this remote situation until a virus vaccine is widely available and distributed. Even if the vaccine is available, one would hope in early 2021, the medical experts are saying that it won't be widely available or distributed until perhaps mid-year or late spring. So we're looking at another 6 to 8 months of this probably, maybe longer than that, but at least another 6 to 8 months of this current situation. I think it depends for the impacts on what kind of businesses you're talking to. I think for tech, the extension is not perhaps as consequential as it is for smaller businesses with shallower reserves. The large tech companies are going through this pretty well right now. Most of their workers, if not all, are remote. That's kind of becoming the standard way of operating for many, at least until next summer. I think it's the smaller businesses that really are more hand to mouth. They were more hand to mouth before the pandemic began. And with the federal support not available now, the question is, how long can they hang on until business resumes? So local governments are trying to accelerate the opening as fast as they prudently can, but I think we're going to lose a lot of smaller companies between now and perhaps 6 months from now. And of course, for the tech companies, it depends. Those that are in the later stages and are getting new funding, they're getting through it okay, generally, and they're moving ahead, especially if they're in the right fields. The very early stage ones, a bit of a tougher story, but at least for all of them, the capital is there if they can use it properly.
Great, Sean. Sean, good to connect with you, chat with you again. We were together at track, and we did a couple of sessions in early beginning of the year. Sean, while we all look at the impact of this pandemic, what are a couple of good things which we would like to see stay on?
Well, There's a lot of good things we could look for. I should mention, just on the bad side, because I forgot to mention that I think one of the big negative impacts or big uncertain impacts is around kind of the cities where we all live. Ridership on public transit is down 87%. And this raises the question of the viability financially into the future of public transit. You know, BART and all of our bus systems, if you go, and some of us have been to downtown San Francisco, other center cities lately, they're ghost towns, and all of the local retail and business services that you would find there normally are really in difficult shape. The hotel industry, so hospitality, it's going to be very, very tough. Airlines, very, very tough. Street level retail, very tough. Arts, very, very tough. So it really depends on what you're looking at right now. And I think commercial real estate, with so many vacancies rising up, very tough for the foreseeable future there too. But there are definitely upsides. As we know, crises like this are very often a spur to innovation, and we're seeing that. We're seeing it by the way we're interacting now electronically. There's just going to be more and more of that as our tools become more sophisticated. And we are seeing investment flowing to companies that are in a position or that are able to pivot to address the challenges we're having now. So, so many things in biotech and life science. I think very strong outlook there, of course, related to the pandemic, but I think we're seeing a continued strong flow of investment into the life science sector pretty much across the board. Things having to do with IoT, things having to do with robotics, remote learning, remote communications and management. I think that whole suite of activity, I think we're going to see more and more innovation coming out of that, partly because that's the way the world is taking us, and partly because it's out of necessity.
Right.
Hey, Sean, I have one question. Because working remote, so you see the Palo Alto, Menlo Park areas, property prices dropping, but the surrounding area actually are increasing. Similarly, the states, many California, Silicon Valley people start to relocate all over the place to somewhere closer, maybe even to Nevada or other Texas or other places. Does this bring impact to the Silicon Valley's future?
Well, it will, but it's a little bit hard to predict exactly how that's going to pan out over time. And as some people speculate that, well, so many people are going to leave and not come back. And that's going to be the way it is permanently, or they're never going to work in a physical office again. I don't believe that's true, although there will definitely be an adjustment. I don't think many of us are going to go back to 5 days a week, full-time sitting in offices. However, when we see people working remotely, many of them are working from their homes where they were before. We've seen more younger people tend to leave the core urban areas, but often not going very far. They may be going to live with their parents, maybe somewhere in the suburbs. Some of them are moving to places near Silicon Valley where they can actually get a larger place to live with more space. They're spending so much more time at home now that they want not a small apartment or a shared apartment. They want someplace where they and maybe their children can spread out. So many of them are not going very far. They're still within the gravitational pull in the orbit of Silicon Valley. They haven't disappeared, but they're not necessarily living in Palo Alto or Menlo Park or San Jose or San Francisco. Some, of course, are going farther out, and that may not be a terrible thing. In fact, for the rest of the country to see a lot of innovation maybe popping up, not just here, but more strongly in other parts of the country, I think we'll find some going to Canada. We'll find some, I hear people in Puerto Vallarta saying, hey, you can work from Puerto Vallarta, which doesn't sound so bad, really. I would think about that. But I think at the end of the day, the gravitational pull of the valley is going to remain very, very strong. That companies, for the most part, will want their people back together at some level, maybe not 100% every day. They'll want them back together. I think people will want to get back together And it may not be a bad thing altogether that there is some dispersal going on, because we've seen generally around the Bay Area, home prices stay strong and going up because people want to get out of apartments and they want more space because they're going to spend a lot more time at home. But we've seen rents going down in major cities where, you know, tech workers tend to cluster. Rents are down, about 20%. And, you know, they were so stratospherically high. It was such a difficult issue for this region, the cost of housing, which it was becoming a competitive disadvantage, that in the longer term, if housing prices stay high but rents drop, that could be a good thing in the longer term. It could make this place more affordable than it has been for many years.
Okay. So, Sean, one last question. Personally, how do you want to remember 2020?
Aha, it's an interesting question. We should ask all the judges.
I want to remember it in the rear view mirror.
Yeah.
You know, it hasn't been a total loss for me. You know,
the year, right?
there's so much
reflection
online to people, but rear view mirror.
Okay, great.
Okay, great.